If you were to give advice to a teacher who is potentially thinking about doing project-based learning, what would that be?
Be willing to experiment. I think, keep our design principles at the front of your mind. How are you personalizing? How are you making adult world connections? How are you designing the class in a way that is most effective for your students? And then be willing to take some risks and involve students, I think, in the process of designing the project with you.
Come up with a good structure, come up with a good skeleton for the project. Be comfortable letting the students go.
Do the project first. Please do the project first, because you will see so many issues that you might not even think of. A rule of thumb I learned when I first got to High Tech High was do the project yourself, time yourself, and multiply it by 4. That's how long it's going to take the students to do it.
Yes, don't be afraid to make mistakes, because you're going to make mistakes and you need to be willing to tweak as you go, as well as tweak for the following year. You have to be really good about scaffolding the work so that you have this ultimate goal, this ultimate product that you're working for, but your classes every day are built in a way that you're like making progress to get there. You don't have just like this unending project time, like where you just give the project and now we're just going to work on it every day. You have a lesson on, how to write the prologue, and
The biggest advice that I can give with project-based learning is, A, don't be intimidated by it. Very basically, when you involve a student in their learning and you turn the learning over to students, it becomes more meaningful. And so don't think that because you're up there at the front lecturing and they're quiet that they're actually getting it. The reality is that they're being quiet. That doesn't mean they're learning. So that having been said, student-centered learning is the most important part. I think to be able to differentiate activity-based learning and project-based learning is important. Activity-based learning is where students are working together to do something that has some type of hands-on product outcome. And that's great. That's at the very least what we should be doing is activity-based learning. No more lecture-based learning. Turn it over to the students, let them work together, let them discuss, let them talk about critical questions, and let them solve problems together. Project-based learning is a little bit different in the sense that a student embodies a very specific role and they need to research that role and become a specialist. That's the difference between activity-based learning and project-based learning. Activity-based learning is like making yogurt. I bring the materials, I bring the protocol, and I have my students all follow a procedure and ultimately make yogurt together. And with that, they learn about all sorts of biological processes. Project-based learning is making my students become experts at fermenting. Learn about fermenting more than I know. Learn about creating a documentary more than I would know. Creating a fermenter's guide more than I have ever done. That's where they became experts in something. And then they developed, so they embodied that role and they developed a product that has greater depth than I could have described to them to do procedurally speaking. At the very least, though, you got to turn it over to the kids. You got to turn it over to their learning.